On my birthday, my mom said, "I never wanted a son like you." "Then stop pretending," I said. I made sure she remembered those words. 3 years later, she was crying for forgiveness. That sentence still tastes bitter in my mouth. Sharp, metallic, like biting your tongue until it bleeds. If I'd kept quiet, if I just smiled through the cake and candles, maybe things would have been different. But back then, I still believed some words needed to be said. I didn't realize how far they could travel, or how much damage they could do. Emma's cake sat in the center of the dining table, her proud little project. 12 years old and already more thoughtful than most adults. She'd insisted on baking it herself. Vanilla sponge with homemade frosting. I was supposed to be happy. I wanted to be. Claire sat to my right, her hand brushing mine under the table in those little reassurances she always gave me when Mom was around. Across from me, Margaret swirled her wine in the glass like she was waiting for a jury to return a verdict. "So," Margaret began, setting her glass down with a sharp little click. "Still in the same position at work? Or have they finally noticed you?" Claire stiffened beside me. I forced a smile. "Actually, because, Daniel," she interrupted, leaning forward as though delivering a lecture, "you're not getting any younger. A man with a family should be aiming higher than just coasting." "I'm not coasting, Mom." Her eyes flicked to Claire. "I just think you could do better. For them." Emma glanced between us, frowning. I felt my jaw tighten. I tried to steer it away. "Speaking of better, this cake looks amazing, Em. You did a great job." But Margaret wasn't done. "You know, your father, rest his soul, had drive. He built something. You've got, what, a paycheck and a hobby." I could feel the announcement burning a hole in my pocket, but the urge to tell her had evaporated. She didn't deserve to hear it. Not now, not ever. My chest felt tight. "Mom," I said slowly, "I had something I was going to tell you tonight. Something good. But you've managed to make it the last thing I feel like sharing." Her expression barely shifted. "Oh? What could possibly be so sensitive?" "I was only telling the truth." I let out a short laugh that wasn't really a laugh. "The truth." And that's when she tilted her head, gave me that patronizing look I'd grown up with, and said it. "I never wanted a son like you." The room went quiet except for the low hum of the AC. Claire's hand froze on mine. Emma's fork clinked against her plate. My ears rang. I don't remember thinking. I just remember the words leaving my mouth. "Then stop pretending to be my mom." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but for once, she had nothing to say. We finished the evening in silence. No cake, no candles, no promotion announcement. Just the sound of chairs scraping against the floor as we cleaned up in different rooms, orbiting each other like strangers. By the time she left, the air felt cooler, lighter. But inside me, something had shifted, like a bridge that had been damaged just enough to eventually collapse. I didn't know then that those 4 words, "then stop pretending," would echo for years. I didn't know she'd repeat them to others, twisting them into something cruel. And I didn't know that one day, she'd be the one holding on to them, with tears in her eyes. 2 years had passed since that birthday. In that time, I'd learned the art of polite distance. Margaret and I only exchanged a handful of words each year, short, bland holiday texts that meant nothing. Claire didn't push me to reconnect, and Emma had stopped asking about her grandmother altogether. I told myself I didn't miss her. Some nights, I almost believed it. It was a Thursday afternoon when my phone lit up with Frank's name. He was an old family friend, someone who'd known me since I was a kid, someone who still called me Danny, even though I hated it. "Hey," I answered, tucking the phone between my shoulder and ear as I closed my laptop. "Danny," Frank said, voice low. "I'm calling you because, well, you need to know what's being said about you." That sentence froze me in place. "What do you mean?" "I ran into your mom at the store last week. We got to talking, and she told me you've been having a hard time, that you've, been a little unstable lately." I actually laughed at first because it sounded so absurd, but then he kept going. "She said Claire's not a good influence. She keeps you away from the family, that you cut your mom off for no reason, and," he hesitated, "that Claire's poisoned you against her." I sat there staring at the wall, my pulse picking up. "Frank, you know that's not true." "I know," he said quickly. I told her I didn't believe it. But she's talking to other people, Danny. Your Uncle Mark mentioned it at poker night. This thing's spreading. By the time we hung up, my chest was tight and my hands were clammy. I could feel the heat crawling up my neck. Claire found me in the kitchen, leaning against the counter like I'd just been told bad news, which in a way I had. What happened? She asked. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her expression tightening with each detail. When I finished, she shook her head. She's trying to rewrite the story, make herself the victim. She's lying about you, I said, almost apologetically. She's lying about us, Claire corrected, her voice calm but steady. And she knows exactly what she's doing. She's hoping you'll react, blow up, make her sound credible. She's already making me sound credible. To the wrong people, I muttered. Claire stepped closer, resting a hand on my arm. Don't take the bait. I wanted to listen to her. God, I wanted to. But the thought of my mom planting seeds in people's heads, people I grew up with, people who watched me get married, was like swallowing glass. For the next week, I tried to ignore it. I told myself it didn't matter what she said, that anyone who knew me would see through it. But then Aunt Lydia stopped answering my texts. My cousin Ben forgot to invite me to his engagement party. The distance was spreading, and it wasn't accidental. One night, after Emma had gone to bed, I picked up my phone and dialed Margaret's number before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the second ring. Daniel, she said, like we'd spoken yesterday. I know what you've been saying, I told her. No hello, no small talk. I have no idea what you mean, she replied. But her tone carried that smug undercurrent I knew too well. About me, about Claire, about why we don't speak. A small pause. Well, if people are asking, I'm not going to lie. You did cut me off. And you do let her make decisions for you. My grip tightened on the phone. I cut you off because you made it clear you don't respect me or my family. And Claire? She's the reason I have any relationship with you at all. You're overreacting, Daniel, she said, like she was patting a child's head. I almost let her pull me into an argument. Almost. But instead, I exhaled slowly and said, you can tell whatever story you want. Just remember, Mom, truth has a way of showing up. And when it does, you'll wish you hadn't twisted it. Before she could respond, I hung up. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a fight. But I knew this wasn't over. I could feel it in the way her voice lingered in my head long after the call ended, calm, calculated, and ready for the next move. It was a Thursday night, the kind where the rain sounds like static against the office windows and the city feels miles away. I was wrapping up late, the last few lines of a report glowing on my monitor, when my phone buzzed on the desk. Unknown number. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something in the pit of my stomach told me to answer. Hello, Daniel? This is Jean Walker. I live across the street from your mom. Her voice was soft but carried that urgent weight that doesn't leave room for small talk. I'm sorry to bother you at work, but your mom's been diagnosed. Stage 3 cancer. She's been in and out of the hospital for the last few weeks. I froze, staring at the raindrops tracing lines down the glass. She didn't tell me. Jean hesitated. She told me she didn't want to, said she doesn't need your pity. I pinched the bridge of my nose. The office suddenly felt too bright, too loud. When did she find out? About a month ago. She's not doing well. I just thought you should know. When I hung up, I sat there for a full minute, the only sound in the room the hum of the air conditioning. Stage 3. My mother, the woman who told people I was unstable, who turned my own family against me, who looked me in the eye on my birthday and told me she never wanted a son like me. And now she was sick. By the time I got home, my shirt was damp from the rain, and my thoughts were knotted. Claire was at the kitchen counter grading papers. Emma was curled up on the couch with a book. I told Claire first. She listened without a word, setting her pen down slowly like she needed her hands free to catch whatever was coming next. She didn't call you herself? She finally asked. No. Jean said she doesn't need my pity. Claire let out a humorless laugh. But she's fine with letting you hear it through a neighbor? I leaned against the counter, running a hand through my hair. I don't know what to do with this. You do know, Claire said gently. You just don't like the options. She wasn't wrong. She doesn't have anyone else, does she? Claire continued. Not immediate family, no. Daniel, she said, choosing her words carefully. You need to decide if you're willing to let her illness rewrite the history between you, because she might still be the same woman, just weaker. I looked toward the living room. Emma had set her book down and was watching us, sensing the weight in the room. Emma, I said softly, come here for a second. She walked over, her hair falling into her eyes. What's going on? I hesitated. Grandma's sick. Cancer. Her brow furrowed. Like, really sick? Yeah, it's serious. She was quiet for a moment, chewing on the inside of her cheek the way Claire does when she's thinking. Are we gonna help her? The question hit harder than I expected. Why do you ask? Because, Emma said, glancing between us. You always say we should help people if we can, even if we don't like them. Claire and I exchanged a glance. She was right. It was the kind of lesson I'd preached for years without thinking I'd ever have to apply it to Margaret. I swallowed. It's not that simple, Em. Her eyes softened a little. Just because she's sick doesn't mean she's gonna be nice now, right? Exactly, Claire said quietly. Emma nodded like she understood more than she should for her age. So, are you scared she'll hurt you again? The room went still. I wanted to tell her no, that I was stronger now, that I could handle it. But the truth sat heavy in my chest. Margaret didn't need much strength to cause damage. She'd proved that before. That night, after Emma went to bed, Claire poured me a glass of wine and we sat in the dim light of the living room. You don't owe her a relationship, she said. Illness doesn't erase what she's done. But if you choose to help, you need boundaries, and you need to be ready for her to push them. I sipped the wine, staring at the darkened window. In the reflection, I saw my own face, older than I remembered, weighed down by a decision I didn't want to make. Some part of me felt an undeniable pull to at least check on her, to make sure she wasn't alone in that house, scared and stubborn. But another part of me, the part that still burned from her betrayals, wanted to leave her exactly where she'd put herself. On the other side of a wall she built brick by brick. And somewhere in that space between guilt and anger, I realized this wasn't just about her sickness. It was about whether I was willing to open the door again, knowing full well she might slam it in my face. First, I told Claire I wasn't going anywhere near that house. But Emma kept asking if being sick changed things. And when Margaret finally called me herself, not to apologize, but to say the treatments were too much for one person, I heard myself saying I'd help. God knows why. The first night back in my mother's house felt like stepping into a time capsule I never wanted to open. Same beige walls, same faint smell of lavender cleaner, same antique clock ticking just loud enough to remind you that time here didn't move forward. It circled back on itself. I told Claire it would be temporary, just long enough to get Margaret through her chemo cycles, manage her medications, and make sure she kept her follow-up appointments. Claire didn't fight me, but the look she gave me before I left said everything. Don't let her drag you under again. Margaret greeted me at the door like I was a visiting nurse, not her son. Bedrooms upstairs, same one you had in high school. I cleared out the boxes. We kept things polite those first few days. She asked if I wanted tea, and I asked if she needed groceries. Conversations skimmed the surface, careful and impersonal, as if we were strangers trapped in the same house. But the quiet didn't last. It started small. A comment about Claire's loud laugh when she came by with Emma, said in that syrupy voice she used when she wanted her insults to sound like jokes. Then, a remark about Emma being too sensitive for her own good. As if empathy were a flaw, I let it slide, until she brought up my career. You still at that office job? She asked one evening, stirring sugar into her tea. Project manager, Mom. I got promoted last year. Emma? She took a sip, her eyes fixed on the steam. Shame you didn't aim higher. I thought you'd at least be a director by now. The old heat rose in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. Not everyone measures success by job titles. She smiled faintly. That's what people say when they stop trying. I excused myself before I said something I couldn't take back. A week in, I found the first sign of trouble. I'd gone through the mail piled on the kitchen counter, thinking maybe I could help organize things. Buried under a coupon flyer were 3 unopened envelopes from the hospital. Past due notices. Thousands of dollars. When I asked her about them, she waved a hand. Oh, they always send those. I'll pay when I can. Mom, they'll send this to collections. They can wait, she said flatly. I've got other priorities. I wanted to push, but she turned away, busying herself with the kettle like the conversation was over. A few days later, she let something slip. We were in the living room, her legs propped on the recliner after another chemo session. She was dozing, half in and half out of sleep when she muttered, "Frank wouldn't have let this place fall apart." I froze, unsure if it was a real plan or just another one of her digs meant to get under my skin. I decided not to take the bait. Not yet. Her eyes opened slowly. "He's a friend, Daniel. You know that." "I know he's the one who called me about your concerns." She narrowed her gaze, the kind of look that meant I'd hit a nerve. "He looks out for me. Is that why you were planning to leave him the house?" The silence that followed was worse than a confession. She didn't deny it. I sat forward. "You were actually considering cutting me out entirely? You've made it clear you don't want this place," she said. "Why give it to someone who wouldn't appreciate it? I'm here now, aren't I?" She tilted her head. "For how long?" That night, I lay in my old bed, staring at the ceiling, the moonlight striping the walls through the blinds. I thought about the unpaid bills, the half-truths, the calculated barbs, and I realized she was testing me, not just to see if I'd stay, but to see how far she could push before I walked away. The next morning, I didn't wait for her to start. Over breakfast, I set my coffee down hard enough to rattle the mug. "I'm here to help you get through this treatment," I said. "That's it. I'm not here to play your games or compete with Frank or earn your approval. You want me gone? Just say the word." She stared at me over her toast, unreadable. Then she smiled, cold, small, but there. "Touchy," she said, as if the conversation hadn't just drawn a line in the sand. But I saw something shift in her eyes, just for a second. Maybe she realized I wasn't the same son who used to swallow every word she threw at me. Margaret's decline came fast, faster than the doctors expected. The fatigue settled into her bones, and she started missing more meals, sleeping through the afternoons. I stayed out of her way when she was resting, keeping the house running, making sure she had her meds on time. But one evening, as I walked past her bedroom, I heard her voice. Low, conspiratorial. "Yes, Frank, yes, I mean it," she said. Her tone was warmer than it had been with me in years. "It's already in the paperwork. The house will be yours." So she hadn't been bluffing. That slip hadn't been just venom. It was the truth. She'd rather give everything to Frank than leave a single thing to me. I stopped mid-step, and the words froze me in place. "Daniel?" she scoffed. "He doesn't deserve it. He'll be fine without it. This way. Maybe he'll learn some humility." The bile rose in my throat. I stepped back into the hallway shadows, listening to her chuckle at whatever Frank said next. When the call ended, I didn't wait. I walked straight in. "Humility?" I asked. She flinched, but only for a second. "Were you eavesdropping?" "I live here," I said. "Your door wasn't even shut." Her chin lifted. "And? It's my decision. You've never cared about this house anyway." "That's not the point, Mom. You're giving away the only family home we have to some man you've known half as long as me. Just to teach me a lesson?" Her mouth twisted into something between a smirk and a grimace. "Sometimes lessons need to hurt." I took a step closer, my voice low but shaking. "I gave up weeks of my life to be here. I've driven you to every appointment, managed your bills, cooked your meals, while you've done nothing but tear down my wife, my daughter, and my work. And now you want to erase me out of spite." She crossed her arms, the defiance still there even as her frame looked small in the chair. "You've been coasting for years, Daniel. Maybe this will light a fire under you." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You really think betrayal makes people stronger? No, it makes them leave." That night, I called the in-home care agency. By the next morning, a nurse named Teresa was scheduled to come by 3 times a week. I moved my things out of my old bedroom before lunch. When I told her, Margaret's voice cracked. Not with regret, but with shock. "You're walking out? Just like that?" "I'm done playing your games," I said. "You've mistaken my help for weakness. That's on you." Her eyes searched mine like she was looking for the boy who used to apologize first just to keep the peace. He wasn't there anymore. At the door, I paused. She looked smaller than ever in her chair, the evening light cutting across her face, turning the lines deeper. For a second, I thought I saw something almost human flicker there, fear, maybe, or understanding. "You'll remember this," I told her. "Not what I said 3 years ago. This." I left before she could answer. The call came on a cold Sunday morning, the kind where the frost still clings to the edges of the windows and the air feels heavy. It was Teresa, the hospice nurse. "She's asking for you," she said quietly. "If you want to come, I think now's the time." For a moment, I just stared at the phone. Months had passed since I walked out of her house. Months of silence. No birthday cards for Emma. No messages passed through Frank. Not even a petty rumor. Just absence. And now she wanted me there. The hospice room was warm, too warm, the kind of heat that clings to you and smells faintly of antiseptic. Margaret lay propped up in bed, the woman I'd known reduced to a frail frame beneath pale sheets. Her hair was thin, her skin almost translucent. For a second, I thought she might already be asleep. I didn't come here for her. I came for me, to make sure the last thing I said to my mother wasn't spoken through clenched teeth over a phone line. But when her eyes found me, they widened. Not with triumph, not with that sharp, measuring look I'd grown up under, but with something else entirely. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice raspy. "You came." "I did," I said, taking the chair by her bed. There was a long silence, the only sound the low hum of the oxygen machine. Finally, she swallowed hard. "I was wrong," she said. "About Claire. About you. About everything. I didn't move. I didn't speak." She went on, her voice trembling. "I measured worth by the wrong things. Money. Control. Who obeyed me. I thought if I pushed you, you'd become the man I wanted you to be." Her eyes shimmered. "I didn't see you were already that man." A single tear slid down her cheek, then another, and soon her voice cracked entirely. "I was cruel. I was petty. I pushed you away because I was afraid you didn't need me anymore. I don't deserve your kindness, but I'm asking for it anyway. Please, forgive me." The words hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. And in that moment, I felt everything at once. Relief that she could finally admit it, vindication for every slight and every wound, and a deep, festering resentment that she had waited until now, at the end, to say it. I leaned forward, resting my forearms on my knees. "Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip, Mom," I said slowly. "It's not magic words. It's something you earn." Her chin trembled. "How?" "You can't, not now," I said. "It's too late for that. But I can choose not to carry this weight anymore. That's the closest I can give you." Her breathing hitched, and she closed her eyes. She nodded faintly, as if even that small concession was more than she'd expected. We sat like that for a while, the heat of the room pressing in, the oxygen machine humming steadily. She didn't try to justify herself, didn't lash out, didn't break the silence again. When I stood to leave, her eyes opened one last time. "Thank you," she murmured. I didn't answer. Some things are better left unspoken. Kind of sad ending, I know. But what would you have done if your own mother spread lies about your family and then came crawling back for help? Do you think Daniel should have forgiven her in that moment? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want more stories where family betrayal cuts deep, hit that subscribe button.